So the first topic of discussion: should all art majors be removed from university, at least paid university, where you have to pay money to get education? Should art majors? Because I feel like art majors very useful in society. We listen to music all the time. We're trying to create art at the moment. Anything can be art, right? The fucking painting behind me is art. I don't know if I can swear here because it's YouTube, but it's fine. Decide not to swear because I want to get monetized in the future, 10 years down the line. What was I saying? So art is very important. You see that painting over there. The two viewers are not gonna see it, but you see that painting, very artistic. I'll tell you about it later. Like how the guy is like creating a new face because whenever we leave our house, we put out a new image. Uh, should art be removed from? That doesn't mean removed from
Should
society.
art be removed? That's a pretty
Then we
grand
get
statement.
Soviet Russia, but no, like removed from the education system. There's a lot of things we could talk about in stuff like that.
Well, I feel like at least with the Australian government, they've already tried to remove it. They made it like double the price, right?
They made it double the price. Is that true?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah.
not
Like
know
I
that.
feel like it's like 2,000 a course or something to do art course instead of STEM courses. But like I feel like a lot of the way they do art, at least from what people tell me, is studying old art, which I know is always the inspiration for new things. But like it's not really putting you in that state of mind to like create something innovative, right? I remember like all the what do you call it, Montessori and like experimental education things back in like the days when only the elites who could actually like had parents
Study
that could
arts.
read like the 1% that were
Well, it's
literate and
still
stuff.
like that, but
They used to go to universities that was so open ended because there wasn't really a curriculum or anything or like a scheme to like you know feed the rich off like 60% of the population that needs to go to uni and all that stuff. They would just have like an open ended figure something out, make something sort of degree outline, like in
liberal
Cambridge and
arts.
Oxford and all that stuff too.
That's what the top unis.
They would just come in as a bachelor's and then be like, just figure some shit out, you know.
That's what the rich people do
That's
with
what
their
really
kids.
inspired a lot of the 20th century, early 20th century revolutionaries and all that
Well,
shit, like the Picassos and all that stuff. You know,
I don't think
that's what I think it is. Like, why don't we have people like that today? You know what I mean? Or do you think it's just adapted?
I don't think Picasso came from a rich family. I think majority of the great Renaissance artists, maybe if you look at Michelangelo, maybe I think was well off, but because he was part of the church or whatever. I don't think good art is created by a wealthy background or you having a particular education. Good art is usually created by people who've gone through struggle and they
Yeah, but like
project
the
their
people who had the
struggle via their
opportunity
art.
to do that usually got like art education, and most of them were like in the
You
top
think
one
so?
percent of every society. I'm talking about like the art we can actually see today from like 20th century and before. I don't know about late 20th century, maybe a contemporary stuff that was it was like different, but I'm saying like the European stuff, right? Like Renaissance, Romantic era, Baroque, neoclassical, all that stuff. Pretty sure that was all like generally wealthy people.
But I also think at that point, the reason why we don't, going back to the previous point, you said why we don't see as much art anymore, the art that we did see back in the day, right? Is because there's so much oversaturation of art. Getting art out there is so easy now. Anyone can fucking draw a painting and put it out there. Whereas back then, the people who had access firstly to paintings, the canvas, and then the paintings, to have the all the oils and all the different dyes to then go on and paint the Mona Lisa or whatever was again going back to what you said, a particular part of society who had access to those things, which is why a painting like Mona Lisa would not even get two looks now if it was made today. But back then it was a huge thing because firstly it was a very elite who actually had access to those materials in the first place, and secondly maybe art was perceived as something the elites only did. And I mean, I know the Mona Lisa has a huge backstory of how it got stolen and everything, which made it even more famous. But like even like the other ones, which other paintings have Vincent Van Gogh? They all have like a very pretty interesting story, which I think makes the art more interesting. Like the fact that Van Gogh cut off his ear or whatever.
It's like all these artists that we remember, a lot of the time, the way they become famous to people nowadays is the same way like X Factor contestants get selected. It's like, oh, my son died in a car crash, and like, my wife has leukemia, and and they
Yeah.
sing like shit, but it's like, they end up getting it just because the story's so insane,
Do you think this is
The empathy.
the other question? Do you think because a lot of artists are weird, just weird in general. So my uncle, he's a pretty big artist in Pakistan, right? And he's all over the world. He's traveled through his art. He's got into travel and have exhibitions all around the world, including Sydney. He had an exhibition in Bondi, Double Bay, Brackley Sands, Rockdale, countless places. And he's the most successful by far in my family, and he was an artist, which is like he had to break a lot of barriers to even get into that position where he is right now, coming from a conservative background. He is also the weirdest. Like he'll do stuff that like he's not. He's a normal human, but he'll just do random stuff. He'll just have a cigarette in his mouth without smoking it. He'll just have it. He'll just had a cigarette and just like act like he's smoking it, but he's not smoking it, right? Shit like that. And he would just like go off topic and he would talk about like weird stuff, but then he would come up with this insane art and he's like an enigma type. Everyone just you just sit with him and you can talk to him about hours about the things that you've never like talked about with anyone else. He'll bring up these weird topics of discussion. And I've noticed that a lot of famous artists throughout history, and not art in the sense, not only art in the sense of painting, whatever, like famous directors like Quentin Tarantino and the famous movie directors are usually just very weird. Do you think they are weird, which sort of give like results in them becoming that creative and like looking in things from different perspectives and becoming artistic, or do you think they they realize that, oh, I have to be weird and have to act autistic to become artistic?
Well, I think now it's very different to back then. Like I think probably back then there was no way to really know what the normal was, right? You didn't have like any exposure to anything other than the people in your town or village or whatever was said in the newspaper, right? That's even if you could read or you got the newspaper. So I feel like at that time, if you were different, the only way you'd really be known today is if your story traveled. And compared to all the people that heard that story, it was just wild as fuck. But like I think nowadays people can actually act it because they have an audience which can perceive that and deduce that this is straying away from the norm and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, I think like one thing about now is art is like you have so many sources of inspiration, but at the same time you have so many things you have to conform to because of social media and things like that, that to actually inspire something completely new, completely innovative is very difficult because a lot of the time there's a pressure to be like everyone else. Back in the day, you didn't know what everyone else was like. There was no way to be in touch with what others were doing other than in your church or religious group or your family or your town or whatever. And it's very easy to be rebellious against them because you have no idea what everyone else is doing. But it's pretty hard to be rebellious against 1 billion people that you get to see all their daily doings on social media because you feel like, damn, if I don't fit in with 1 billion people, who the hell is there for me? You know? So the true creatives now, they probably stand out even more because they've chosen, despite being so different to billions of people, that they have access to what they're doing as well. They have all the data there. They're still like, you know what? I really don't care. I really am not going to conform. I'm really not self-conscious like
Kanye
that.
West.
But then obviously there's like the performative
The
side
people who
of things
perform,
too.
like I
There's
think
the
that's Kanye
performative side.
West is a perfect example of performative weirdness.
Yeah.
Whereas Quentin Tarantino maybe is more natural with it, or who else is
But you have to be good at selling things with art too, especially now. Like I think like if you have a enigma or whatever, I feel like you can sell the art a lot more. Like I don't know if the Mona Lisa thing was a myth. The whole thing that Da Vinci paraded around his Mona Lisa and said it was the greatest painting of all time. No one believed
I think
it,
got
and then
famous when
now we consider it one of the greatest paintings of all time. Like that was like a sales job, you know. Like you just
It was
say it
more
enough and
sales.
people start. Oh yeah, some guy said it was the best painting.
I think it
of
got
all time.
stolen as well. I think that was like the main thing.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure, but I could be wrong. Yeah, it is. Yeah, being different now is so hard, and that's why it's become a trend amongst the youth to try to act out, like the whole indie movement. We live in the inner, like I live in the inner west in Sydney, and that's very. It's like a mainstream culture here to be different, to stand out amongst the masses, and that will give you brownie points in society because you're trying to like
Because you're not
stray
being
away
different
from-
at the end of the day.
You're not,
just
because there's
being
a-
the same in a group which you'll receive validation for being part of that group. It's honestly no different as being a Mormon or being an Amish or being anything like that. Because at the
you're
end of the day,
Shiite in
you're just
Dubai,
getting.
man.
Alright. Well, any group, okay, any group for that matter, majority or minority.
It's just
You
and
get
you get that
brownie points,
validation.
you get brownie points.
You go to
Right.
enough underground raves, you'll get validation from those type of people, and if you go to enough churches, you'll get validation from Mormons.
Right. And I guess like if the group that you're in has ideals which enable the mentality of feeling like a minority more, then despite you just conforming to another group of people like any other group, you just feel like you're different. You feel like you're the other, right? Which I guess gives you a little bit of uniqueness or individuality, which a lot of people feel like they're losing in day and age, you know. So especially people who live in the cities, you know, working their desk jobs. A lot of the times they
Why are
don't
you
feel
calling me
like
out?
they have the same individuality as others, so they have to have
It's the main reason I
particular
want to do this.
opinions or you know, yeah.
But then there's a lot of 24-year-old dudes online making podcasts as well with a mic that they just got.
Exactly.
But then there's always gonna be things that other people are doing. Do you think originality can never be manufactured organically? It has to be something that you perceive. You look around the world, you grow up, and you realize, hey, I am like everyone else. I have to become this version of myself. Do you think at this day and age it can be something that organically happens? You like something when you were 4 years old, and you just keep going in that rabbit hole, and you become a master at that particular thing that nobody else knows anything about, and that's the version of you. Going back to my uncle, he just did stuff that was different. Like one thing I noticed about him always, he had this one outfit on. From the age that I first saw him, he was like 40 when I was born. Now he's like 65, whatever, something like that, right? And he's been wearing the same outfit. That's something that I can spot him from a mile away. I think that was something that he organically has always just done. He never really cared about clothes.
Mm.
Do you think people nowadays can achieve that level of authenticity,
Well,
or
I
it's
guess
just manufactured?
it's I guess how you define originality, right? Like if originality means there was no nurture involved, it was pure nature, it was pure genetics, right? Even the argument if it is pure genetics, is that original? Because your genetics are passed down from your parents, right? It really just gets into what that definition is. If we're assuming that it wasn't based on like influences, no nurture was involved after a certain age, let's say, right? Like nurture, parental guidance, whatever, is acceptable, but then after a certain age where you gain more exposure to things outside of your home, then the pure originality is not utilizing any of those influences, right? Not utilizing any of those data points that you're being exposed to. Yeah, it's pretty difficult now, I think, but like I said, back in the day when all you knew were people of your local religious group, town, and family, probably would have been a lot easier, right? Even, you know, the whole apple falling on someone's head and thinking about gravity, right? Like, that sort of progress, you know, I don't know, like, is that original thought? I don't know. Newton was brought up in a very elitist institution. He was schooled in such a way on classical physics and blah, 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 whatever was there at the time, right? Sure, he created a lot of it, but like, was that originality? I don't know, you know. There could have been a lot of other people that gave him influences to conceptualize of such an idea prior to the apple falling on his head or whatever. Does that make his discovery an original thought? We like tout about the inventors of our time, about how they were geniuses because how in the world could they have figured something out? But everything was leading towards something, right? Is there anything which is just a blank data point that didn't have a line following it, you know? I don't know.
I don't think they can ever be that, because
Other than
unless
the
you're
Big Bang,
born
right?
in like alone in like the wilderness, and because you someone is inevitably gonna influence you. Otherwise, you're nobody.
Mm.
Like if you're like it could be your parents, right? It could be any, like at the beginning it's gonna be your parents, but over time, parts of society are gonna influence you. The music that you listen to, the school that you go to, and so at any given point in your life, you're gonna get influenced by something that someone else has done,
Mm-hmm.
and that's gonna become part of you, and that's gonna be like be presented in your form of originality that you bring, right? That there's gonna be some sort of influence. So in essence, you can never be truly purely original. But that's like
Mm.
going back to the initial thing, bro. Just art is going back to the actual question. I don't know how we got here. Should art be removed from universities? But not only for educate, like for universities. I think we should still have avenues wherein people can embark on learning more about art. But I think it should be free. I don't think you should have to pay for something like this, because the point of university is that the primary reason why people go to university, or the stereotypical reason why people go to university, is the fact that to get a job right after. And I think a lot of the people who go into arts, that becomes a stigma. Then, oh, you go into arts, you're not going to get a job because art doesn't pay that well, or there aren't enough jobs on art. So that's where I feel like if we just remove art from university, I don't feel like that. I just want to discuss it. I don't know if that's right or not.
Well, I guess the secondary or even primary purpose of these tertiary institutions is also to generate research and innovation in those particular areas
Yeah,
in a
I have to go
publicly or
back.
privately funded way. So, like, I feel like if you don't have art offered at universities, you also don't have the academics, right? If we're assuming there's like private art research institutions that essentially replicate the sort of findings that would happen in a university. Fair game, but like, what's the impact of not having that research? Like, I can't think of a paper off the top of my head that was produced by an art school that I've wowed at or has been in the news, but I'm sure there has to be a gain. I'm sure there has to be a gain from these sort of publications to society. Like, I don't know about like ray guns, sort of, like breakdancing, gender studies stuff, but like, even that has a niche demographic that is
He's
probably
pretty famous
assisting.
now.
Right?
How many famous Australians are as famous as Reagan? Not many, were.
But I guess more like the publications that she produced. Sure, that led her on a personal journey to then be recognized by everyone now. But like, I'm just trying to I don't really know much about how individual publications and art schools of universities have impacted society. I'm sure they have. Like, I'm sure they have. I guess like even things like in the past, how at universities they would conjure new ways of writing music, or like new ways to tap into like frequencies that, or like a sequence of frequencies, so a particular scale of notes that maybe the Western world wasn't using or the Eastern world wasn't using, and they had come up with their discovery that we can tap into these frequencies, and these particular instruments allow us to play these frequencies, and it gives us a different sound. I guess that also provides the platform for a lot of people to create new art as well, right? But then at the end of the day, it all comes back to, if art publications help more art getting made, what does art help? What impact does art have?
It helps the soul.
It helps the soul.
I feel like listening to music. Can you go a couple of days without listening to music? You want to listen? It's just something that we enjoy. It helps us connect. It helps us. I'm not that artistic. I'm an engineer, so it's probably the wrong.
Do you think if we took music from this world today, there would be like some sort of anarchy sort of situation? Or
I think it's because we already have music and we take it away, anarchy. But if you just started without music, nobody would.
So you think if there was a development of human society with no music, we would just adapt to that, and we wouldn't?
Obviously, if there was, of course.
Do you think almost like we'd find auditory pleasure in like background, like sounds of life, like the wind?
Birds chirping.
We'd pay more attention. You think it would
I think that's what
actually
humans
have
have always done throughout
reverse
history.
effect? Yeah.
It's just recent that obviously there's always music, but to the extent, do you think ever in history people have listened to music every day of their lives? Like I would imagine only like big events, like maybe in the Roman Empire would be when they were at the amphitheater and they were killing each other. They might have some drum sets playing before they went in the field, whatever. So it'd be like once in a couple of years, whatever. But now it's just every day. Every day we listen to music, and even when we're not listening to music, we're listening to music because when someone calls you on Teams, it's music. When someone calls you on the phone, it's music. When you
Like
you get a notification,
stimulation.
it's a bit of a tune. So there's always music playing. I think the main, benefit of music, it just brings people together. It, when people feel romantic, they play music. It gets closer to people. When people are angry, when someone's shooting up a school, they probably play music, right?
But it's that they play music in the duration of the activity, not like they're doing or feeling thing and then they decide to play music, right? Like the music almost like accelerates or catalyzes the emotion, right? Like, sure, some people they feel sad and then they play their sad music, sad girls playlist, right? Sad boys playlist, or it's that the music that they're actually listening to in combination with whatever they're experiencing as a human, then basically enables them to reach a deeper emotion that they wouldn't have been able to reach previously. Wouldn't you say that? Like, it could also be that
it heightens your emotion.
It kind of highlights your life, your emotional
It heightens what you're feeling at the point. If you're feeling sad, it's like a high. Yeah. It's like a mini high that you get. That's why it's addictive. Because after when you don't listen to music for a while and you listen to music and you get that feeling. When you listen to the same song over and over again, you just hate it. You start hating it. It's like with anything.
Isn't that wild that like just imagine the first person that heard like a group of people sing together. Like they never heard any like organized sound before.
I think people always sang.
No, individually. But the concept of singing as a group together. Imagine the first person hearing like 5 voices come together to sing something. That must have been like an orgasm.
It had to be like a South American.
All they heard was like, the chirping of birds, the rustling of the wind, the leaves falling on the ground, branches snapping, people talking and chanting, and then they heard 5 voices sing together like harmoniously. That must have been like You know,
Imagine the first guy who had a mushroom. He thought he was in heaven or something. Like he was like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, we have so much overstimulation that like it's very hard to appreciate these things by themselves. You know, like the first person who played a piano, like that must have been like insane. You know,
but I don't think it's like a one thing that just happened. The piano was made over like I'm sure there was instruments before that.
yeah. Well,
Like,
before that there was the harpsichord, but it was
yeah,
essentially like
it's not like just
a
one day a guy
tilly
made it.
sounding piano. But like, I actually don't know like what the order of instruments were prior to that. Like, I'm sure there were like horns and things like that before.
There were
Like single note instrument. There were single note instruments.
there was a didgeridoo.
There's a didgeridoo. That has multiple notes as well. But like,
I need to get a didgeridoo. I want to get a vinyl.
like it's so easy for us to write off like instruments. Like, imagine back in the day, stand-alone instruments was peak music. Now we need like 5 instruments, 10 different bits of percussion, effects, distortion, and like a whole layering of harmony in terms of voices, just for us to actually be like, this shit low-key mid. Like, just imagine like people back in the day, it was all a function of exposure. They heard one individual instrument, one individual voice, maybe 2 voices together. That was like peak for them. We need some like Tame Impala, Charlie XCX like crossover with like all of these layers, all of this complexity, which is beautiful in itself. But it's like, you know,
You think it's just gonna keep?
and it's the same people wearing Uniqlo shirts and like preaching that I'm actually a minimalist at heart, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're all just overstimulated. You know, it's a relative minimalism.
But do you think our brain? I don't. I think the common issue that people talk about in terms of why we feel the way in our generation, the way we do, I guess, in an increase in anxiety and depression and whatnot. It's just our brains have not developed as fast as we have. So we have created all these stimulants that we get stimulated
100%,
by
100%.
significantly faster than how our brain neurons are
100%.
presented. So we're not even realizing how badly we're affecting our life. Because we got to realize this same brain was used by the cavemen, and their main goal in life was not to die. They would just go out and get food, and then there was no like nothing to worry about. I mean, there was a lot of things to worry about, not to die, but the main like I guess the binomial distribution of the things to worry about was a lot smaller. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're just not dying.
And imagine like we have the highest life expectancies of any human form ever. So the amount of years that pass with one iteration of evolution from your father to the son or whatever, it's like takes so much more time, but the input we're receiving that we should be evolving with respect to is like so much more. So like we're taking on so much, but the amount of time it takes for our body to actually react to then change the workings of our body, our brain, our nervous system onto the next generation, it's like completely inversely proportional, you know? So it's a recipe for disaster. You're right. We're not able to counter that, you know? Why do we have obesity and anorexia in such unbelievable proportions all at the same time, all in the same country, all in the same city, all in the same household,
suburb,
all in the same household, you know? You know?
One sibling could be obese and one could be anorexic.
Literally. It's like
yeah, I don't think like this has never happened in history. But do you think it's ever gonna reach a point where we get like we overstimulate ourselves so much, and our brain is like not like after like centuries of like this pattern continue, right? It's only gonna continue, and it's only gonna get worse because technology is like advancing at a much faster rate than our human brain is, to the point where we just like we just implode or something. Like, we just cannot handle. Our brains start exploding. Like our brains start disintegrating, because our brains like we the more, you know, I guess I don't know if there's a study done, but I feel like I lose my brain cells when I use too much social media, and eventually you're gonna start, you know, it's gonna keep increasing to the point where the potency of the things, the technology that you're consuming is a lot stronger than what it is now, and such that your brain gets affected a lot faster. And because humans are inherently greedy, people are always gonna pursue it to making those products or that technological advancements, because they'll give them more profits, because people get more addicted to them, and so that cycle will continue until we just implode.
Well, yeah, I think essentially the only solution to prevent implosion is becoming ignorant, like flatlining. Like, that's what I always say. It's just like, at some point, a lot of people in this world, I am one of them, I'm sure you're one of them in some respects, we have to stop taking in information to save ourselves.
So when I told you about U.S. politics, I just stopped because I was like, why
At
am I
some
getting?
point, if we take in any more information, the actual response that we're gonna have, even physically, or mostly it'll probably be like hormonally or something, right? Like how do you measure things like stress? It's all like hormone responses, stuff like that, right? It's just not gonna be healthy for us, right? And I feel like back in the days when the rate of evolution or the rate of improvements for like mental capacity for humans or physical capacity for humans, the rate at which that was increasing with every generation was probably more than the amount of shit going on that took on. So we had more empty space in our mind to actually allow for things to happen at some point. And I feel like now it's the complete opposite, right? There's more and more things happening, and the amount of space we're gaining in our brain, our computational ability, is not increasing at the same rate, right? So instead of now being able to absorb all these new inputs, we're just having to settle for just declining and rejecting like majority
And then
of
people
what
like
could
Trump
be
get
going
elected.
into our head.
because-
Which, what is the end outcome? Going back to art, right? The end outcome is probably a reduction in innovative abilities, right? Like if we stop taking in a lot of things, how are we gonna be able to actually react to that to create art? Art is just a reaction to what's going on at the end of the day, right? And I feel like the ability for people in the past to do that was probably in a lot more of a purer state because they had the mental freedom in some respects.
You see this
compared to
in the
what we
music. I
have.
saw this again at TikTok,
Mm.
where this person talked about how generationally the music that we listen to, the lyrics of the mainstream music, the most popular music, is a foundation of what the society is currently doing. Is so if the lyrics are a lot more sexual, obviously nowadays it's a lot more violent.
Mm.
It's a lot more. If you bring a guy from the 16th century and make them listen to Lil Uzi Vert or like Travis Scott, the guy's gonna disintegrate into people. Like, what is this? When you listen to like the 90s music, even 80s, 60s, when the Beatles were big, it was all about like "Here Comes the Sun" or whatever. Like Elvis, always happy music, but love, about like pure love, not like having a situationship and that the hinge man's not replying to you and stuff like that. The modern day pop songs talk about, and obviously the rap music is, what the rap music, the majority of lyrics are. So, and now because that and it's a lot more explicit. Do you think because the way you can get the easiest way of getting human attention is, well, sex sells and explicit things sell. It's just the easiest way of getting attention, right? This is the least, I guess, creative way of creating a song, which is, or creating a movie. Just have a lot of scenes that are provocative, and you'll get enough men to watch it, or women as well. And music can be seen as the same way, like where we're reaching a point where it's so provocative and it's so sexual. And it's going back to the thing you said, over time, our innovation would decrease. Back then, music was very different, and music was representation of the society. Do you think the reason why music is getting so sexual or more explicit over time is because we're putting less effort into innovating and putting more effort into just creating something that will quickly sell because more people are going to listen to it? It's the same reason why a lot of more movies have probably started to have more sex scenes and more unnecessary scenes that don't really have much to do with the plot, but more so to do with the fact that more people are going to watch it because it hits our inner hunter-gatherer nerve. When we see a scene like that, we're more prone to watch it.
So, like, I'm sure a lot of people do it like that. Like, in their actual ideation and design of the art that they're making, they think about the viewership first, and then they think sex sells. But I feel like the first person to actually do that, to start the trend of people now gaming the system with sex and whatnot, I don't know if they thought that way.
Who do you think it was?
Well, honestly, 50 Shades of Grey really did a lot. I'm sure it was
I
way
think
before
it was
that.
way before.
No,
I
of course
was
it was way
in the
back.
90s or
But I
something.
think that really made
that
it
was
like
pretty big.
normal.
That was
I think
pretty
that
big.
really made it like super normal. Like I can
Extremely
just
high
talk
woman
about
viewership, by the way.
taking
We gotta
dick
talk.
and make it like
We gotta
normal.
like for your.
Like, I feel like it just super normalized it.
We
Not
gotta
that I'm
normalize
against
how
it, but, like,
many women have watched that. Continue, and I think that
the book I'm saying, the book I'm saying.
or the book, even like that 365 dude.
Oh, that was wild. That was
Dude, like
I still haven't even watched that. I started like 30 minutes. I just
Sure.
couldn't even watch it.
I
I just stopped at a certain
whatever.
point. I was just like,
that
this is
like
not-
we gotta like stop letting those videos out, because then a lot of, I feel like, it puts pressure on. Like,
And the women.
but I don't. Anyways, continue.
365 is a extreme, like that's a specific example, but like there's a lot of like counter examples for women, of course. Yeah.
And the whole porn industry, like
Yeah,
it's just the whole
obviously,
porn industry
obviously.
is the counter example.
But I don't know.
I think it was way before that. It was probably like one of those like '90s rock star.
Sure. But
Like,
why do you
what's that
think?
guy's?
Why do you think they felt like obviously Prince did a lot of things.
Prince.
like
That's what I'm
that,
saying.
or
He was
Rick
like
James
5'2" or whatever. I think you have, if you're born as 5'2", you have to become Prince. Otherwise, you're.
But like for example, right? Like if we talk about what was the primary content matter of written art, right, or recorded art, but written art precedes recorded art, right? Because we didn't have recording capabilities. It's like poems and literature and things like that, right? What were like the themes that they were really going towards, right?
Love.
I would say it would be love.
Love
right?
is, but not the love that, Drake talks about in some of his songs.
Yeah.
Actually, Drake is probably the only one who does talk about it properly. I feel like
Mm.
who is a good example? The Weeknd.
No, but like even if we like, I was thinking more like just like poets, like Shakespeare and whatnot, right?
Do we
Like,
even have
that
poets
sort of
anymore?
stuff.
My grandfather was a poet. He was broke, so I don't like.
They got the Poets Corner stuff, They
Ooh.
do the.
I think
Yeah,
poets is
Unis,
only.
Poet Slam. They
I
got
feel like
poet-
if you
poet
have,
slam.
if you have
Poetry
like a,
slam.
if you have, what's a fun call where your parents like have fun for you?
They have a fund,
No, like when your parents are rich, you have like a fund that just goes.
trust fund,
If you have a trust fund, you like you're into poetry. I feel like that's one of those things. Like you're just like
because you could just see.
You
from
see
your
through the-
penthouse, like
you can see
what's
through the
going on below
penthouse,
you.
and you don't have to worry about like paying the bills or whatever. So you just like have more time to focus on poetry. But-
potentially. But it's funny. You see from a penthouse, but you're so high up, the clouds are blocking everything below.
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
right?
so
You're
a lot
not
of
really
pen-
seeing what's going on. You're just seeing
In-
through the glass.
In Dubai, there was a lot of penthouses that were above the clouds, and people went to know
What are they really seeing?
what are they really
I don't
seeing, but they don't have to see anything really. When you're that rich, it's
Yeah. It goes back to the ignorance thing,
This-
right?
the-
It
the-
goes back to
the slave that works in your house can go down, take a picture, and show it to you. It's underneath the clouds. We don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. No, but I don't know. I think if love was the originator, why was love such a motivating topic? I think part of the reason is because it was something that at the time was virtually unattainable for a lot of people
Okay,
in the
that's
same
fine.
respect.
Really?
The sort of love, the sort of ways they used to describe love as like an overbearing, overpowering, like almost like a divine sort of like being or something, right? That just like washes over you, blah blah blah. Obviously, I'm no one to talk because I'm not from the 16th century, but like, do we really believe that the modern man and the modern woman were experiencing such things when they ended up getting married at the age of 12? Like, I don't really know.
That's your opinion.
that's my
feel-
opinion,
I'm
but-
sure there are people who
So-
felt love like
But
that.
the point I'm trying to get at is like, I feel like a lot of the times the inspiration behind talking about those sort of things, love, tragedy, a lot of those things, you might say that it's coming from personal experience, but I think a lot of the time it's coming from like a personal longing or absence of these things. It's almost like a desire to have these things, right? So I think a lot of the time it's things that the viewers, which then made these guys famous, these poets, the Shakespeare's and the like. I feel like a lot of the times they were the ones who felt like it was missing in their life, and they could achieve a feeling of escapism when they read the poetry, right? That I can have a mistress now, or I can have a whatever, someone I actually love, a younger girl or whatever crazy stuff they used to write.
Younger
about,
boy
right?
as well.
Or a younger boy.
A lot
in
of the
case
popes, I
of-
think, did
of
that.
Some of the poets.
The
right?
Renaissance was pretty big back in that time. The younger
Yeah.
boys.
But I
What
think
happened to the decline of boys, bro?
the decline of boys as well. But I think, what is it now? It's like 49-51, right? We're on the
No, like decline of boys being part of that.
Oh. You want it to go back up? You want it to?
No, I think
resurgence of
the
boys?
fall of the Catholic Church has something to do with it.
There's a proportional impact potentially.
Yeah.
potentially. But no, I think now, like, you might argue that that you can do anything now in terms of sex, or like you can say anything now in terms of sex. But I feel like not everyone is able to have like the passion and the sort of energy that is displayed in a lot of the lyrics or in a lot of the movie scenes pertaining to sex and sexual things, like seeing all of the like crazy, like slamming someone into a table or into a wall, or like describing it in a song with all of
What
these
are you
like
watching?
drums and guitar and all this, like making it all cinematic. I feel like a lot of people don't have stuff like that.
I think the
People feel
desire
they have
for
a
love
mundane
is
life, and
yeah.
you know, sure they might feel love, right? Maybe love is now not cool enough, right? So we have to up it, you know. Maybe that's what the authors gravitate towards. It's we need something that they personally feel like there's a bit of an absence of, right? I don't know if like now we talked in the beginning how a lot of them now just look at the audience first and make a decision, but the people who started it who didn't necessarily realize that that would be something that would kick off like that. I feel like a lot of the time they were just assessing personal absences in their own life, you know, things that they wanted longing for. I think the creatives themselves look at art as an escape for them as well, you know,
Creators themselves look at art as a. I
escape
think
for
that
them
is
as well. Right?
majority of art would, because you got to realize the guy who's drawing the like creating the art
Yeah.
obviously has his feelings that are being presented through his art, and his feelings would be maybe a longing for a partner or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll have to end this here. We can continue another one because this is like it's not gonna upload. This is like an hour long.
Is it?